Hi everyone, this is Christian Moralia and we are at the Transformative EdTech channel. Today we are going to be connecting the world. We are going to be using EduProtocols, doing some, if you want to use the term, EduProtocol mashing, taking two of my favorites for history classroom, the Frayer model and the Cyber Sandwich, tools that I've used and effectively, and we're going to put them together to start the process of vocabulary comprehension, and we're going to be writing a summary. So let's get started. EduProtocols, once again, my favorites, one of my favorites. So Frayer model and Cyber Sandwich, highly effective in our history classrooms and pretty much any content area. But I really like the idea of app mashing. You can take the EduProtocols and you can put them together, couple them together, or you can put three of them together for a whole lesson and make it as interactive as possible for students. So let's see how this works. First of all, our lesson is going to focus on world history theme of interconnection. And what I've done is I've used the UCI history project lesson for 7th grade and I've adapted that. UCI is a great, actually the California History Social Science Project is a great resource for any teacher, K through 12. It doesn't matter what state you're in, they have all kinds of resources. You just simply access their website. CHSSP is the California History Social Science Project based out of UC Davis. And their resources are just phenomenal. I've been using them for many, many years. For example, this is the 7th grade history curriculum resources. You can see any one of these resources here. It pretty much goes through the 7th grade curriculum here in the state of California. So I'm going to focus on the whole idea of interconnectedness with distant regions, and I want the students to be able to tie that into today, because I think it's real important as students are looking at curriculum that they understand how something is tied in from today to the very distant past, in this case, the 3rd century. So let's talk about the Frayer model. What the Frayer model does is it breaks down things into, you basically have a grid. And you could do this on paper, but it's usually best done on a Google slide or whatever platform you're using, that you can create a slide here. And you have a definition. Here's the central word here, interconnection. The students are going to be writing a definition. What are the characteristics of civilizations that are interconnected? And the whole focus here is, once again, is to develop vocabulary, but make sure that it's meaningful. And what I did is I utilized a map here. Typically, you don't have to do this, but you can do this. You could just say, provide your own example of this particular word. But I had to be very explicit here because that's what I want the students to do. And then they do a non-example of interconnection. So the procedure is we come up with a vocabulary word, and the focus is, once again, it's on interconnectivity, but I want the students to be able to apply this term to their life. So I create a blank slide deck for students, and in doing this, there's the instructions, and it's pushed out. If I'm using Canvas or if I'm using Google Classroom, everybody's going to get this slide deck. If I want, it's a class slide deck, so they can all put their information. If I want to do it in groups, I can do it that way. On Canvas, I could create a link to the slide deck or just push it out so that each student can work on it individually. This particular assignment groups, this works well in groups of 2 or 4. I put down 4 here, but I would actually modify it to 2. So each one of the students is going to be completing the sources, which we're going to take a look at here. The sources are from the UCI History Project. And so we want them to define interconnection, and then they're going to complete the assignment. So they're going to be looking at 4 different sources, 2 for each student, and they're going to use the Frayer model to complete the slides. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So here's source 1. It's the ancient city of Teotihuacan in Mexico, and we're looking for interconnectedness. So if the students are looking for interconnectedness, they already have the definition. And so we would be looking for, when they talk about how they're interconnected, how the communities are as connected to the communities in Guatemala and Brazil. So they are using the Freire model. They would go back to the slide. So before they go back to the slide, they do want to make sure what are some of these characteristics here. So they're talking about how there were strong ties between the elites, and they should be using some of the information here. So ball game, rubber balls, ceramic pots, animal bones. So when they go back to the Freire model, they would provide those connections here. So remember, each student is going to be doing 2 of the sources, and they each have their own slide. So the second source is the seated Buddha. And once again, the students are focusing on the interconnectivity here, and they're talking about the hairstyle and forms of robes and how they are connected with that of the Western and particularly the Greek and Roman culture. The next student, so if you're doing with 2 students, then the next student is going to be looking at this website here and a short video about trade and the discovery of monsoon. So once again, focusing on that idea of interconnectivity. The student is also doing this next source here, and it talks about the various regions, the Kingdom of Daquin, which is also called the Roman Empire, and how it's connected with other regions as well. So once the students have done this, they are going to be working on their Freire model, and they are, when they're doing their connections with today, they should be talking about things like how are we connected? So for example, here in the United States, how are we connected to other cultures, other countries? And of course, there's all kinds of different ways. If you talk about communication, if you talk about, let's say students are gamers, what we'd want them to do is draw a line using their Google tools that would show a connection from one particular culture to another, and we want them to actually on the line explain. So let's say, for example, I know a lot of my students would be soccer fans, so let's say there's a connection between the United States and Europe. The players go back and forth. We could talk about trade. Just think about what are some of the things we get. A lot of things come from China, so there's the interconnectivity there. And we'd want students to think about as many as possible different examples. So I would actually expect to see quite a few examples here. Now, once the students are done, they're going to be doing the cyber sandwich, and the topic is interconnectivity. So this is a slide deck that would be pushed out to the students, the pairs as well, and what they're looking for. And once again, this is done by the cyber sandwich is another idea from John Carippo and Marlena Hebern, just one of their many strategies that they've published and used by teachers all around the country, actually everywhere now. So in this, with the cyber sandwich here, we're asking them to do research. Now they've already done the research because they already have the vocabulary information. So we are basically asking student 1 and student 2 to fill these out on this slide here. They're filling out their findings from their research, the interconnections. Student 2 would be the interconnections between the countries. Student 1 could look at the interconnections between in the 3rd century. Next, you can see they have a Venn diagram that they fill out they work with their partner and looking for things that are different and things that are the same with the cyber sandwich. Now, next, what we have here is the summary. So this is where they're doing like a formative assessment. They're writing a summary of what they've learned. So they go back to the information in, if you want to call it the sandwich, in the Venn diagram. And they should be able to produce at least a 5-sentence paragraph, which would be fairly simple because they already have the information from the cyber sandwich. So basically what we've done is if you want to use the word EduProtocol mash, we've done an EduProtocol mash with both the cyber sandwich and the Freire model. and we now have a formative assessment. The teacher can look at it from afar or from online. They can see what the students have done here, and it's it's readily visible, and you can see if they have an understanding of the whole theme of interconnectivity. So thanks for joining me. Next week, we'll take a look at another one of the EDUProtocols and how we could best integrate it and use best practices.